Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. So this is going to be what I hope to be a brief video, and I'm going to be discussing some new revelations regarding Sindel in the Mortal Kombat 11 video game. So before I get started, I would like to welcome, I believe I got like 2 new subscribers. So to those subscribers, thank you. I hope that you continue to enjoy the content. And to my, already present subscribers, thank you. Happy to have you. I hope that whether this is your first video or whether you've watched all 100 some that I've made thus far within the year, I hope that you continue to enjoy the content. So let me just dive in. So I've actually been wanting to make this video for about a week, but I wanted more information to come out. So I think I'm just going to do this video and then maybe do one more video a little later discussing what I think about Sindel's design and her win poses and fatalities and all that stuff. Spoilers. I am not pleased, but I will get into that in another video. What I wanted to briefly discuss was the Kombat Kast that dropped about, 2 days ago now? The Kombat Kast and the comments by Stephanie in the Kombat Kast that confirms what I and many other people have been saying, right? Because it explains why this change happened, right? So just to do a brief recap for anybody who is not too familiar with the Mortal Kombat franchise and doesn't really know what I'm talking about. So there's a character who was introduced in Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995. Of course, something else to be in. Excuse me. There's a character who originated in Mortal Kombat 3, which was the third entry in the Mortal Kombat series back in 1995, by the name of Sindel. Right, Sindel's general backstory, more or less, has been, up until MK11, was that she was this very gothic, scary-looking person, but in truth, she was the Queen of Edenia, right, which is the same realm that her daughter, Princess Kitana, comes from. So her backstory, more or less, is the fact that she was Queen of Edenia, right? She had a husband, King Gerard, not Jared. I don't know why they keep saying Jared. It's Gerard. I'm not saying it the way they say it. I don't have to say it wrong just because they do. But anyway, she had her husband, King Gerard. She was the queen, and they had a daughter, Princess Kitana. They lose their Mortal Kombat tournament. This allows the evil Emperor Shao Kahn to invade. Edenia cannot stop the invasion. Kahn kills the king, claims the queen as his bride, and adopts their daughter as his. Sindel, if you're going by MK3, commits suicide out of grief. She dies, and then 10,000 years later, during the events of MK3, Shao Kahn has her resurrected on Earth, so he can basically bypass the rules of Mortal Kombat by claiming he has justification to come get his wife, basically. And that he can basically bypass the rules of Mortal Kombat and invade that way, instead of actually having to go through the proper process of winning 10 Mortal Kombat tournaments in a row. Right, so that's it, more or less. So at that point, she's resurrected, brainwashed, is the evil queen, loves Khan because, again, she's been brainwashed, but eventually her daughter, Princess Kitana, gets to her, is able to make her see that, no, everything Khan told you is a lie, this is our real life, our real past, and then from that point forward, Sindel is a good guy, or a good girl, I guess you could say, and she works from then on out to, assist her daughter and her daughter's friend Jade in reclaiming their homeland, right? So she goes from this evil queen who was brainwashed to, the kind, loving empress of the Garden of Eden, more or less. That's pretty much what Adeni is based on. So there's that. More or less, that's her story, right? And when the series was rebooted in 2011, Mortal Kombat 9, her story pretty much stuck to that. The only major changes were that it was Quan Chi instead of Shang Tsung, who actually did the resurrection spell and brought her back, and that in Mortal Kombat 9, her suicide was more of a self-sacrifice. Instead of killing herself out of grief, she kills herself as a means of self-sacrifice to place some sort of protective barrier around Earthrealm so that Khan can't invade. But when she's resurrected, naturally the barrier is broken and Outworld's able to invade. So again, not too much difference. In the reboot, what happens is that she's brought back, brainwashed, and another big change is that she never gets that redemption arc, because she's basically a slave, right? A zombie slave, more or less brainwashed. She ends up killing the majority of the heroes in Mortal Kombat 9, and then is pretty much shown as a revenant in Mortal Kombat 10, and because Quan Chi, if I remember correctly, is killed in Mortal Kombat 10, there's no way to actually restore her human self. So her last entry prior to this was that basically, she was still this evil, brainwashed zombie baby, more or less. And then MK11 has totally recast her as an evil empress. Right, so that's the story pretty much as it stands at the moment. Her storyline was fairly consistent thematically up until this game, right? She'd always been the good queen, loses everything, takes her own life, whether it's grief or self-sacrifice, depends on which, I guess, storyline or timeline you want to go with, either the original series or the reboot, but still, she takes her own life. She's resurrected 10,000 years later, and is brainwashed, right? And if you go and depending on which version you go with, she either is rescued by her daughter and then gets her redemption arc, or she never gets to that point and is basically kept a mindless zombie slave, more or less, right? So there's the story for the most part, right? What has got so many older fans like myself riled up about MK11 is that she was retconned and rebooted to have always been evil all along. Right, so, and this is even solidified in her ending. Now, I don't want to spoil the ending too much for those who might be interested, but she says in her ending that the story that we've known all this time is a lie she made up. Now, how in the world she made up a lie after death? That, I don't know. I don't get it. But this is what they have her claiming in Mortal Kombat 11. That everything we know from the previous iterations of her is a lie. Not that it didn't happen. It's just that the story around it and our understanding of it, by consequence, I should say, is a lie. So this has, gotten many fans upset, myself included. I've made several videos detailing how I do not like this change. So, what does this whole recap have to do about anything, you ask? Well, it's because, sorry, my nose is very itchy right now for some reason. But that's because in the Kombat Kast, right, that dropped, about a day or two ago now? Right, where they have like an hour-long discussion almost about Sindel and the changes and how she plays and all this other stuff. During the Kombat Kast, a woman named Stephanie talks about Sindel's lore and the changes to the lore, and she confirms. Stephanie confirms that the reason why Sindel was changed is in part because of the fact that, in Stephanie's opinion, her lore and her look never matched up, which, with all due respect to Stephanie and her opinion, that was the point back then. The point was that Sindel looked scary and sinister, but actually wasn't. That when she actually was not a brainwashed zombie woman, she actually was a nice person. She just had this scary gothic look. I'm pretty sure you've heard of the phrase, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. Or perhaps the phrase, face of an angel and mind of the devil. Right? Meaning that people don't always look like how they actually are. That was kind of the visual tale they were telling, having her evil look contrast with her actual benevolent personality and her being a good person underneath it all. So there's that. So apparently this retcon was done to have her lore and her appearance mesh up, right? And this apparently was also done, according to Stephanie's comments on the Kombat Kast, this was also done to give Sindel agency in her backstory. Because in her established backstory, she doesn't have much agency, right? She doesn't really have agency until Kitana, and this is if you're going by the MKK3 storyline. She doesn't really have any agency after her death and resurrection until Kitana reaches her and is able to convince her that Khan's been lying to her and has basically been able to break the brainwashing, right? Prior to that, her only actual act of agency or autonomy is suicide. And of course, grief-driven suicide, you're not exactly in your right mind at that point. So Stephanie confirms that this change was made in part to give Sindel more agency in her backstory. And the reason why I bring this up is because I flipping called it. I mother fudging called it. Okay, you can check out Liana K's video that she did about a week ago on Sindel, and where she gave her thoughts on the changes, and I wrote a long, lengthy comment, because that's what I do, in there, stating that NetherRealm was embarrassed of its own past, and that they were changing this, making these changes, because Sindel does not have a lot of agency in her regular storyline, and that if they reimagine her, recast her as evil all along, this means that she has agency and that she is complicit in the downfall of her world. And wouldn't you know it, although I said it 1 week earlier, the Kombat Kast confirmed it just 1 or 2 days ago. So I called it a week early. A week early. That they changed this for agency. Because they wanted the queen to have agency. Like, she didn't express agency in her redemption arc, where she actively works with her daughter, with her daughter's best friend and personal bodyguard, to fight off threats to their homeworld, to actively free their homeland. Right? They are the leaders of the Adenian resistance, and they fight against Khan and all of this other stuff. And then later, I think it's in like the last 3 games of the original series, Deadly Alliance, Deception, Armageddon, where they have to face off against the Dragon King. There's even a point later on, again, in like the last 3 games of the story, where the situation is reversed, and it's Sindel who actually has to save Kitana, because Kitana has been possessed and brainwashed. And if there's anybody who can understand what that's like, it's Sindel. And now she gets the chance to, save her daughter, with Jade's help, of course. But she's able to save her child in this instance of role reversal. at the end of the original series of games. So NetherRealm, in an attempt to give a character who regains her agency after a certain point, agency, right, to give her something she herself has to regain and properly earn, right, they want to give it to her from the start. So instead of actually allowing the fans to have a tragic, villainous, basically a tragic figure in general, right, who loves her family, loves her daughter, loves her husband, right, and then actively works to restore everything she lost, her world, tries to bring her husband back to life in multiple endings, right, meets up with her daughter again, and then actively fights with her to free their world. So instead of showing that, hey, a person can be a victim, but then also become a victor at the end, that you can actually overcome all this bad stuff that happened to you, right? That you can go from somebody victimizing you to you claiming and taking back everything that your oppressor took from you. Instead of showing that story, the story that they had no issue with for 20 plus years, they decided randomly to just retcon everything in this game and say, oh, she was evil all along. Yeah, so you took her from this actually pretty well-developed character for a fighting game. Very interesting, well-developed character that the fans loved and adored. I have seen many a video on this, and I've read many a comment. There are not too many people, especially those who really go back with the series like I do, go back to the 1990s with it, who are happy with this, because they took a character who had a good, interesting story, and they took her from this, again, well-developed, interesting character to basic, lusty, evil queen. Thank you, NetherRealm, for showing that you actually don't care about telling stories with the women in your franchise. You just care about lip service. You wanted to create a powerful queen, and you took the resident powerful queen that you had and you made her trash. Thank you. That's exactly what I, as a female player, right, wanted. As someone who enjoys a story, as a reader, as a gamer. Because that's exactly what I wanted. No, NetherRealm, it wasn't. It was a bad move. Nearly every move you've made recently, from the costumes to this retcon, when it comes to the women, have been bad. Please stop. I am begging you. Please stop. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe you should actually shut your mouths, open up your ears, and actually listen to what women, female players, females who have a history with this series have to say. Stop listening to the feminists and the progressives who say that, they'll play your game or whatever if you fix A, B, C, D, and E, and then who never do. Maybe you should actually listen to actual female fans of your work and see what they think, because I don't know of any woman who's played Mortal Kombat who had an issue with Sindel, as she was. Her story was just fine. And here's the thing: if they had wanted to go with a different arc with her, right? I could totally see her being like an anti-hero, sort of like war queen, wrathful thing, kind of like what Scorpion and Raiden did, being these sort of anti-hero type characters who were driven by a positive purpose. In Scorpion's case, it was bringing back his family and his ninja clan. In Raiden's case, it was protecting Earth. But they took very drastic and very violent means to do that. I could see that with Sindel, her, deciding that she's going to kill Khan no matter what, right, for taking her world, taking her husband, taking her life, because regardless of what happened, she killed herself because of him. Whether it's grief or whether it's self-sacrifice, she still took her own life because of what he did. Instead of giving her an arc like that, something that works within the established lore and would make sense from her perspective as a character, you instead just randomly retcon her. Don't even try to make it fit and make sense. Because, listen, this is how I understand the backstory that they want you to believe, right? If we just go with the reboot. So apparently, again, anything that was benevolent about her story or tragic or sympathetic is a lie, according to both Stephanie and according to the ending. So they want us to believe that 10,000 years ago, Quan Chi murdered Sindel, and this is something obviously she's still very upset about, so there's not like an assisted suicide or anything. So she was murdered by Quan Chi. Right? We don't know whether or not Shao Kahn knew this, but still, murdered by Quan Chi. Given some of the dialogue, it seems like he may not have known, given how Sindel chastises him at times when the issue is brought up. So let's assume he doesn't know. So Quan Chi kills the Empress. And then the Empress, or rather, let me start over again. Quan Chi kills the Empress, makes it look like a tragic, sympathetic suicide. Then, somehow, from beyond the grave, Sindel concocts a story, right, that makes her look like the tragic victim and makes Khan the husband she chose, because she gleefully admits that King Gerard was a weak man and that she traded a weak man for a stronger one, right? She basically says that she traded up, right, in her opinion. So apparently from beyond the grave, after an unjust murder, right, she was able to concoct a story that makes the husband she chose look bad, right? And then she's still resurrected by Quan Chi 10,000 years later, right? And not only is she resurrected by him 10,000 years later on Shao Kahn's orders, not only that, she's then brainwashed upon her resurrection to serve a man she already chose, to serve the husband she already willingly chose. Can you see how this does not make sense? Can you wonder? Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I don't think I am. This is the lore that they want you to believe when it comes to the most recent games, right? To the reboot, that Quan Chi murdered her. She somehow concocts a story that blames her husband that she chose willingly. Quan Chi brings her back to life 10,000 years later anyway, and then she's brainwashed to serve the man that she willingly chose, to the point of where she betrayed her previous husband to choose Khan. This makes absolutely no sense to me. This just creates questions that didn't need to be there. This just takes something that was fairly straightforward and understandable and just makes it more confusing. And they did this for agency. Instead of actually telling a story, they decided, how can we impress people who are not going to play our game anyway? Hey, let's take the resident, good queen, wife, mother that our fans love, who have loved ever since 1995, and let's turn her into an evil queen stereotype cause reasons. Because, hey, we need an evil queen. Let's not do what we've always done, which is create shadow archetypes for our Denian women, like Melina being Katana Shadow, Tanya being Jade Shadow. Let's not do that. Let's not create a separate evil queen character to be the antithesis for Sindel, to be her shadow archetype. No, let's take the shadow archetype that we clearly based off Ivy Valentine. If she never had a redemption arc from the Soul Calibur games, right? Let's just basically run with that idea, give her a domination fetish, and then throw her in a purple costume that looks nothing like Sindel, and say it's Sindel. This will go over super well with the fans. We are geniuses. I have no doubt. This is the conversation that NetherRealm had. I have no doubt that like Ed Boon heard this and went and did something like, "Get over there!" Like his famous Scorpion voice. "Get over there!" And start working on that wonderful, wonderful idea. Our fans will just eat it up. As I think I've no doubt established by this point, it was a bad call. Not a good look. Not a good move. I'm sorry, but I would not be taking ideas about changing a character's backstory from someone who doesn't seem to understand the idea of what would I call it? You can't judge a book by its cover, and that just because somebody looks scary doesn't mean they actually are, and that just because someone looks angelic doesn't mean that they actually are. But apparently, these are the people who NetherRealm is taking their cues from, not from fans who actually know the lore and know the history, but from people who don't seem to be able to pick up on even simple, story archetypes, and more importantly, people who, again, are not really invested. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that, on NetherRealm confirming that, yeah, they changed the beloved queen of the game into an evil witch because agency. Because, that's the story that we need, and not a story of redemption and overcoming and regaining your life, taking everything that the victimizer took from the victim. No. We can't have that story where a woman has to actually work to restore everything that was lost to her. No. We need a story where she starts out evil and always remains evil, and even in her own ending gets everything that she wants because agency. So anyway, as usual, I've gone on way too long about this, but let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day. Bye.